Welcome to LSC. It's Sports Time. I'm your host, Bob Hintz. Today I have with me Andy Harris, the former golfer over at Hampton High School. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Well, I tell you, we got to talk a little bit. Your dad was Air Force, and I know your dad and your mom, and you know, it was for years. But you at Air Force, your daddy was down at Myrtle Beach for a while. What a tough duty that had to be.
Tough duty. It's a shame they closed that base, actually, about a decade ago. But
right.
It certainly was a golf mecca of sorts, and then we moved here from down in Myrtle Beach, moved to Hampton.
And you were, what, about in 5th grade when you moved up here?
5th grade. So when I got here, went to Macon Elementary.
Now, you played a lot of, not just golf. You didn't start off being a golfer. Your older brother Jim did, but that's who your daddy wanted to be, a golfer, because he was taller and he wasn't as good in other sports like you were.
That's very true. I played the main sports, basketball, football, and baseball. I played football at Macon Elementary, the Mustangs, right. And played baseball at Langley Air Force Base and basketball as well.
Right. So now, doing that as growing up as a kid, even though you're military, did you live on base or live off base?
We lived on base in Myrtle Beach, but off base here when he was stationed at Langley.
Okay, so then you went into junior high school. Where'd you go to junior high?
Went to Thomas Eaton High there and played basketball.
Do you remember who your coach was?
I don't remember the coach.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Big man. But had a good little team, though. Frenchie Hicks and Greg Blake were a couple of my teammates, right. And we won the city championship that year.
Whoa, fantastic.
So, yeah, it was quite a thrill.
So, and then, when did you get into golf? Were you still a youngster when you got into golf? Well,
that really, the sport, as you mentioned, my dad and mother really wanted my brother to take on golf. He had a kidney operation and a couple of things like that prevented him from playing more contact sports.
Right.
But anything with a ball on it, I rarely let slip by me. So I tagged along, and golf just kind of captured my imagination. I think what I tended to gravitate towards were sports that you could practice hard on your own. You didn't necessarily need a team around you.
Right.
And golf was one of those, and basketball was one of those. And those, I think, that's why I ended up choosing both those two sports.
Right. Now, but you ended up going to Hampton High School.
Yes.
So, and over there, your coach was Coach Seymour.
Seymour, yes. And you coached Bethel High back in those days. And Coach Linwood Seymour, he was also my math teacher. Just a great guy, loved golf, really passionate about it.
Right.
And we had a nice team, included a couple of the upperclassmen were Timmy Baker, and
right.
he went on to play college golf at South Carolina.
Right, I know his daddy real well.
His daddy, yes, great man too.
Yeah. And
I was right in between Timmy, and then his younger brother Billy came up from behind me, and Billy went on to play at Clemson and also had a nice career.
In fact, that's where Charlie's living. He's living down there with Billy down in Clemson.
Oh, he is?
Yeah,
okay, I did not know that.
They just moved maybe a few months ago.
It's a nice
place. And so, because we talk about his boys playing golf at Hampton High, and I wasn't sure where you were in the mix. You were in between them, so.
In between the two.
Right. So, who else was on your? You remember who else was on your team?
When I was becoming a junior and senior, and more the number one man on the team or number two, Keith Leeton and I kind of would spar back and forth between who played the best and on any given tournament. But my senior year, I ended up winning the Peninsula District Championship.
Right.
It was held out at Langley Air Force Base, which was my home
and
course.
I got a story with that because you beat Dale Crumpler in a playoff. For the medalist or championship.
The medalist of the Peninsula District.
If I remember correctly, he hit his ball right down the middle of the fairway, and you got in the trap.
I did, the fairway bunker.
And then you come out of that trap and drop that thing about 4 or 5 feet from the hole.
It was a miracle shot. 6-iron, I remember I hit in there about 4 feet and made it to end it.
Well, and I think he kind of blew his mind because he flew the green.
That's right. You're exactly right. Well, you were his coach, so you would remember as well.
Yeah, but I can remember because I thought that was so neat that you didn't let being in a bunker bug you. And a lot of golfers, and myself included, being a hacker and a weekend golfer, whatever you want to call them, you just don't want to get in fairway bunkers because
No.
you know you can't get to the green.
Yeah,
We can't.
that's true. They're tough, and mentally it's just tough on you. Other fellas out there in the middle of the fairway, and I mean, I learned to handle some of those situations as my career progressed. I'm not sure I was ready to handle it there, but lo and behold, it happened, and it was certainly a nice feeling.
Well, that was a great honor to do that in high school. Then you graduated, you go to Virginia Tech.
I did go to Virginia Tech. I was actually, growing up, I was a big Carolina fan, North Carolina, Tar Heels. And my dream was always to go to Carolina. In the very end, the coach there he was down to, he wasn't really down to giving me a scholarship, but he wanted to be able to get me into the school.
Right.
And I made good grades and so forth in high school, top 10% of my class, honor society, good SAT, but I didn't get accepted. So I needed to rely on the coach to pick me possibly.
Right.
So my parents went, when I didn't get accepted, we went down there demanding answers. And, and they said, well, you really weren't even that close. You needed to be in the top 3% and a little higher SAT. So as fate would have it, I'd been to Virginia Tech quite a few times. I started a conversation with their coach. And I ended up starting there because I was a little behind the timeline, having only applied at Carolina.
Right.
I ended up at Virginia Tech and truly, loved, so proud to be a Hokie and so forth. Had a nice career there.
Well, and talking about your career there, because you played for 4 years.
I did.
And so it had to hone your game and make you. Oh man, I can go to the next step.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it was always my dream to play professionally, but it really at Tech we had an interim coach situation where the previous coach had left the program and had a fellow that also coached the wrestling team come in, and he was more of an administrator and organizer, and might not have been the best environment to flourish, but. It's certainly improved. You work at this game every day, and you feel like if you miss a day, you're going backwards. So
I must be really going backwards.
I'm going backwards these days. But I've worked at it hard, and really after I graduated, and when I had a little more time to truly focus from sunup to sunset, that's when I did my most improvement.
Right. Now, what kind of degree did you get from Tech?
I started out majored in marketing and ended up with a lot of elective type classes. So I thought, well, let me try to double major. So I got a double major in marketing and finance.
Okay. Now you want to go on the tour. But so people don't understand, you just can't go on tour. You got to have a little money.
Got to have money. And growing up in an Air Force family, we were middle of the road, but I needed a little different level of income to set me on my way. And
but you got 4 guys that got together. One guy got together, got 4 other guys who got you a little bit of money.
That's true.
Talk about that, because I thought that was kind of neat.
Well, one of the most important men in my life really is a fellow named Morris Johnson. He grew up here locally in Newport News and started his own mortgage banking company called Johnson Mortgage. Been in business for 35 years. But he liked me as a person, and he thought that if he could give me my shot at trying to play professionally, I'd either succeed or fail, but at least I'd have my crack at it. And he talked to 3 of his buddies into each of them put up $1,250 for a grand total of $5,000. And
well, that paid about your room and your board, right?
That paid for a couple months, and I left here going down to Orlando, Florida, which was kind of the home of the mini tours, professional mini tours. And it was in November of 1986, and I went down there and had 4 top 10s in 7 events.
Wow!
And then came back home for Christmas with my hand out, as if I had proved my worth.
Look what I can do.
That's right. That's right. Well,
because there's a lot of people that didn't get to the top 10.
Oh my gosh, no! These were, I was playing against fellas that ended up going on to star on the PGA Tour, so it was quite impressive. It surprised me. But the guys said, "Look, we love it that you're doing so well, Andy, but we can you just go back down there and try to figure it out yourself?" Which I did, and the money dried up fairly quickly. But I was working at a real nice resort down there called Grand Cypress, And one day a fella came through there that had, I saw some bag tags.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I saw some bag tags on his bag, and it was, I think it was the Cavalier Golf and Yacht Club, so I knew he was from this general area. And I mentioned I'd been home for Christmas, and he and another fellow named R.G. Moore, and this fellow I'm talking to is George Ayers. They had started the Kiln Creek development here in Newport News. It just begun. And I said, well, in my mind, I thought, gosh, maybe they need somebody to represent the club. and
where
maybe,
can I insert myself in this picture?
I gain an advantage out of this situation? And over the next day, I looked on the tee sheet to see when he and his wife might be playing, and it ended up being a slightly botched scheme, but I played one hole of golf with him and pitched my talents to him right there in a meeting. And over a month or two's time, they flew me back in here, and these guys were, it was another four-man conglomerate, but it was a total of $50,000 at that point.
That's a little more than the $5,000.
A little more. It gave me a real honest shot at spreading my wings and seeing what I could do.
Right.
And, you know, that afforded me the opportunity to really play all over the country. And then I played 2 different stints in South Africa.
Right, and that's because there are other places that you can play on the tour. I mean, not on the tour, but there's in South Africa, you can go over to Asia, you can go to Europe. There's other places that you can play.
Sure were, you know, and the ability to go test yourself against the world of golfers around the world, you know, was a great opportunity. And I played a little bit in Europe. Only played a few PGA Tour events. I never had my card to play out there on a year-round basis, but I did make it to the show, so to speak, and I had a good time doing it. I loved it. And
nobody take that memory away from you. I mean, that's there.
It really is. I can't take that away from me, so I'm proud of that.
Well, and to qualify to get into these things, you've got to be a pretty good golfer, because I mean, just not any old guy can get up and get one of these tournaments.
No.
Did you have to go through
some sort of qualifying
for the tournament? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I did in 2 of the 3 PGA Tour events I played in. The very first one I played was here locally. It was the Anheuser-Busch Classic at Kings Mill. And it was a situation where the tournament chairman wanted to give me an exemption, but he didn't have any left. But he said, Andy, you know, show up on Thursday morning in golf clothes and be ready to play just in case somebody withdraws at the last minute. Well, I thought that was a long shot, so I didn't exactly rush up there, but I got up there about 10 or 10:30, and he said, where you been? And I said, oh, I'm here. What's up? He says, well, Jim Thorpe dropped out, and we're going to put you in there. And my tee time was 12 noon, so I had about an hour and a half to get a caddy and scramble around. But that was my first event. And then the other 2, I did have to go through what's called a 4-spot qualifier to get into each of those events. And by then, I was a seasoned player, and I didn't make the cut in either of them, but I shot the identical score, 70-73 in both events. So one of them was called the Hardee's Classic out in Iowa, and one was called the Southern Open down in Columbus, Georgia. Sometimes I say, you know you're over the hill when the only 3 tournaments you played in no longer exist. That's the truth. I'm over the hill. Right.
Now, there for a while, you not on the tour anymore, so you kind of going into business, but you represented Shark and then Maxfly and some of those sorts of things. But then you opened up your own business, which I think is really kind of neat, because I've never heard of this concept. But talk a little bit about that.
Okay, sure. You know, when I looked around and when the decision finally hits you that you know, the money's drying up a little bit. I did ultimately leave the group of 4 that gave me $50,000, and ended up with one man that had been the CFO at Tenneco and ultimately McDonnell Douglas Corporation in St. Louis, and had a good run with him. But when the defense industry hit the skids in the early 90s, his situation changed in terms of bonuses that he was receiving. So I had to think long and hard about, you know, giving up the dream. But it led me into, I was first a golf professional. I worked here locally at the Hamptons under Claude Carson,
Right.
one of my dearest friends. And ultimately another club up in West Virginia called the Pete Dye Golf Club, which was a real private, high-end national membership type club.
Right.
And going into the club pro world, coming off of the playing professional world, was it almost felt like I was out to pasture. I don't know. It's probably just me, but
Right.
I thought, let me look around at some other things that I could do. And a friend of mine that had taken over as a national sales director of the Greg Norman collection asked me to come to work for him. And I did. So I moved back home to Hampton and started covering a three-state region here in Maryland and West Virginia. Ultimately, that led me into another conversation with a fellow I used to compete against on the mini tours, and he was working for MaxFly, which was a big ball brand down in Greenville, South Carolina.
Right.
It was where the headquarters was. And they were hiring somebody to head up the celebrity tour effort that they were marketing themselves with. And he told me where to send my resume. Well, when I followed up with calling his voicemail said he was no longer with the company. So I thought, there goes my opportunity to get into the tour representation world with MaxFly. But as fate would have it, I won the job that he left, and so I hired somebody else to
take the job you were
take
going to
the
have.
celebrity tour job. That's right, and that's what got me into representing things on the tour. And
Right.
I have, from playing for almost a decade, I had quite a network of whether they were players on tour or caddies or agents, and
Right.
I knew quite a bit of people out there. So. After a period of time, I thought I should form my own company and represent more than one of the manufacturers.
Right.
And that's when I formed Spotlight Sports Marketing. And nowadays I represent 4, 5, 6 different companies at a time. Primarily, the main manufacturer that I've represented for the past 6 years is a company called Tour Edge Golf out of Chicago.
Right.
And they're known for fairway woods, but they really make everything up and down the line are great equipment. But
Right.
they're a small company trying to establish credibility out there on tour, and they've used my efforts to get clubs in play.
Okay.
To push their brand forward.
Wow. Well, that sounds kind of neat. We kind of want to wrap this thing up because not everybody makes the tour, and that's not as easy as it looks. We get to watch these guys, but we don't know what they went through or what you went through to get there. But what are some of the opportunities from your golf that are out there?
Oh my gosh, the golf, since I've been playing and then into the club professional world, I'm still a PGA professional with the PGA of America. And they've allowed folks that had maybe been an assistant or a head pro to move into other directions, like sales rep, or in my case, a tour representative,
Right.
or a rules official, or a club builder. So there are many ways that you can stay in the golf business, but not just be
Just not be a golfer.
not be a golf pro. That's true. Yeah. So plenty to do out there with a great game.
Well, listen, I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to LSC and Sportstime. I want to thank our special guest, Andy Harris. I'm your host, Bob Hintz. Until next time.